Level 1. The Private. The winter wind howling across the Kangwon-do mountains cuts straight through the thin, unlined cotton of your olive tunic. You are 17 years old. Your hands bleed from untreated frostbite, the skin cracking in deep, jagged red lines across your knuckles. You are holding a rusted, wooden-handled shovel, not an assault rifle. The glorious Korean People's Army doesn't spend its days preparing for combat against the imperialists. It spends its days digging frozen, unyielding earth to plant radishes and potatoes. Your stomach is a hollow, cramping cavern that dictates every waking thought. You are given exactly 450 grams of boiled, insect-weevilled corn and a thin cabbage soup per day. It's never, ever enough. You steal glances at the older conscripts working the trench line beside you. Their cheekbones jut out like sharp stones beneath jaundiced skin. Their eyes are hollow, completely empty of the revolutionary fire promised in the vivid propaganda posters back in your village. Your canvas boots are 2 sizes too large and splitting at the seams. You stuffed the toes with old, damp issues of the Rodang Sinmun newspaper just to be able to walk without blistering your heels to the bone. Your assigned weapon is an ancient Type 58 assault rifle, its bluing worn away to bare pitted metal. You haven't fired a single live round in your first 6 months of basic training. Ammunition is far too expensive to waste on a peasant recruit. Your real weapon is the sickle. Your real enemy is starvation. You are a chansa, the absolute bottom of a million military hierarchy designed to crush the individual. You sleep in a drafty, unheated concrete barracks packed with 50 other unwashed bodies. The smell is a suffocating sour blend of stale sweat, wet wool, and overflowing latrines. Every morning begins at exactly 5 o'clock with the ear-piercing screech of a brass whistle. You drag yourself into the pitch-black freezing yard. You scream pledges of undying loyalty to the supreme leader until your throat is raw and tasting of copper. You watch a boy from your neighboring province collapse face first in the dirt during a punishing march. Nobody stops to help him up. Compassion is a bourgeois disease that gets you flagged by the political officers. You learn very quickly to keep your eyes fixed safely on the mud beneath your boots. You learn that survival means taking what isn't yours. You sneak behind the officer's mess hall during a perimeter patrol. You steal a rotting potato directly from the slop bucket meant for the base's pigs. You eat it raw, crouching in the dark, the freezing mud seeping into your knees. It tastes like earth, degradation, and victory. The 10-year conscription clock has barely begun to tick. Level 2. The squad leader. You've survived 42 grueling months in the dirt, and it has hardened you into something entirely lacking empathy. You are no longer the shivering victim stealing pig slop. You are the apex predator of the barracks. Your faded collar tabs now display the single red stripe of a Hassa. You command a squad of 12 starving, terrified teenagers who look exactly like you did 3 years ago. You remember the agonizing, vision-blurring hunger of your first years. You ensure you never feel it again, no matter the cost to others. When the supply truck drops off the meager weekly rations, you intercept the quartermaster. You take your share before the pot even touches the fire. You take the absolute lion's share of the solid rice. You leave the watery, translucent broth for the new recruits. They stare at your polished boots, trembling, their stomachs growling audibly in the quiet room. You strike a private open-handed across the jaw for failing to scrub the rust from your belt buckle. His lip splits violently against his teeth. Blood pools in a bright red drop on the frozen ground. You feel nothing but a cold, necessary surge of discipline. Violence is the only reliable currency that trickles down from the elite in Pyongyang. But violence doesn't buy calories. You make your real money in the shadows of the base perimeter. You order your exhausted men into the mountains on their singular day of rest. You force them to forage the freezing woods. They gather 14 kilograms of pine nuts, their hands scratched and bleeding from the branches. You take the heavy sacks into the nearby village under the cover of darkness. You sell the nuts to an illicit smuggler operating out of the Jangmadang market. You pocket exactly 3,500 won, handing over a few miserable coins to the men who actually did the bleeding. It's enough cash to buy cheap, harsh Chinese cigarettes and a small bag of unrationed white rice. You smoke in the biting darkness behind the cinderblock armory. The red cherry of the cigarette burns like a tiny secret rebellion against a state that left you to rot. You teach your most loyal men how to siphon diesel fuel from the aging transport trucks using a rubber hose. You teach them how to strip heavy copper wire from abandoned, unpowered telegraph lines. You aren't training soldiers for a hypothetical war against the Americans. You're running a petty criminal syndicate wearing the uniform of the state. The junior political officers pretend not to notice the missing fuel. They simply demand their cut of the illicit profits. You hand over 3 cartons of smuggled cigarettes to keep your squad off the lethal hard labor details at the local mines. You realize the entire army is a hollow, rotting shell held together strictly by bribes, theft, and fear. You are just a small grinding cog in a massive machine that eats its young. You make absolutely sure you remain the teeth, and not the meat. Level 3, the political officer. You don't wear the grease and dirt of the motor pool or the agricultural fields. You wear the crisp, tailored olive green uniform of the Chaidawan. Your authority doesn't derive from military tactics, marksmanship, or combat experience. Your authority derives entirely from the Central Committee of the Workers' Party. You are the ideological immune system of the battalion, tasked with hunting down ideological cancer. Your primary weapon is a small black leather-bound notebook. You sit in a poorly heated administrative office, meticulously reviewing the Songbun of every man in your unit. Songbun is the invisible, inescapable caste system that dictates every breath drawn in the nation. It determines who eats meat on holidays, who gets promoted to command, and who quietly disappears into the political prison camps. You hold the futures of 400 men in the sharp tip of your fountain pen. You mandate 2 agonizing hours of mandatory ideological study every single evening after the men have exhausted themselves in the fields. The men sit shoulder to shoulder in the freezing, dimly lit assembly hall, their eyes glazing over from fatigue. You slowly pace the center aisle, the sound of your boots echoing against the concrete. You look for the blinkers, the head nodders, the ones whose lips fail to form the words of the anthems with sufficient screaming fervor. You single out a corporal who looks simply too exhausted to stand perfectly straight. You violently drag him to the front of the room. You force him to recite the 10 principles for the establishment of a monolithic ideological system from memory. He stumbles nervously on the wording of the 7th principle. You slowly, deliberately laud his failure in your black notebook. You know his family has a tainted bloodline, a grandfather who owned a small plot of land before the Fatherland Liberation War. You schedule him for a brutal self-criticism session the following morning. He will stand before his peers, weeping, begging for forgiveness for his ideological laziness. They will scream at him, spit at his feet, and mount him, just to prove their own fabricated loyalty. You watch this ugly theater of human cruelty with total chilling detachment. It is your exact job description to manufacture this paranoia. If they are terrified of each other, if they suspect their bunkmate of being an informant, they will never unite against the state. You sit at your desk and draft a dense 12-page report on the unit's revolutionary spirit. You sprinkle the document with glorious, archaic adjectives and entirely false production statistics. The actual truth is entirely irrelevant. Loyalty is a performance, a stage play written in blood and fear. You are the lead director of the performance. But in the absolute quiet of your private quarters, the heavy mask slips. You carefully count the 200 crisp US dollars hidden inside the torn lining of your winter coat. They are bribes from line officers desperate to avoid a negative ideological report. You know the ideology you enforce is a rotting, animated corpse. You fiercely preach the ascetic religion of the state while hoarding the enemy's capitalist currency. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling. You are terrified that someone in the shadows is watching you just as closely as you watch the men. Level 4, the battalion commander. Your collar now bears the heavy twin stars of a Daejang. You officially command a mechanized infantry unit stationed near the tense demilitarized zone. On official state paper, you command a fearsome column of 30 armored personnel carriers. In the grim reality of the motor pool, only 4 of them have functioning engines. The rest are rusted, hollowed-out husks sitting permanently on concrete blocks. The vital spare parts, the alternators, the tank treads, were quietly sold to Chinese scrap metal dealers 3 years ago. You are no longer a military tactician. You are a desperate businessman running a survival enterprise disguised as a military base. The central government provides no food rations, no winter heating fuel, no medical supplies. You must provide for your men yourself, or they will abandon their posts and desert into the night. If 3 men desert from your command, you will be stripped of your rank, expelled from the party, and sent to a labor camp. This invisible pressure crushes your chest every waking minute of the day. You negotiate high-stakes deals with the Danyu, the wealthy shadow merchants, who truly run the black market economy. You lend them your army transport trucks to move smuggled flat-screen televisions and illegal cell phones past the internal checkpoints. The interior guards don't search military vehicles commanded by a major. In exchange for your logistics, the merchants provide you with 800 kilograms of low-grade rice every month. It's barely enough to keep your men from starving to death in their bunks. It's enough to keep them digging defensive trenches in the frozen mud. You sit alone in your damp office, drinking cheap, harsh whiskey poured from an unlabeled bottle. Your stomach ulcer flares up constantly, burning like battery acid behind your ribs. You pop stolen, expired antibiotics to dull the physical pain. A junior lieutenant nervously enters your office, his face pale with terror. He reports that 2 young privates were caught trying to cross the freezing river into China. The silence that fills the room is thick, suffocating, and lethal. If you officially report this desertion up the chain of command, the State Security Department will descend upon your base like locusts. They will violently purge your entire command staff to make an example. You make a rapid, horrifying decision that seals your soul in permanent ice. You order the lieutenant to handle the situation quietly, strictly off the books. You explicitly tell him not to provide you with any details. 10 minutes later, you hear 3 sharp gunshots echo from the dense woods behind the firing range. You don't flinch. You slowly pour another glass of the burning whiskey. You open the official logbook and mark the 2 young boys as having died from a sudden outbreak of cholera. The lie is seamless, practiced, and deeply necessary. The moral rot deepens, spreading through your veins. You have become a shepherd who routinely slaughters his own flock to appease the wolves. Level 5, the border colonel. You are stationed at the edge of the Yalu River, staring across the water at the glittering neon skyline of Dandong, China. This is simultaneously the most lucrative and the most dangerous posting in the entire Hermit Kingdom. You hold the heavy respected rank of Sangjua. You are the absolute gatekeeper to the outside world. Every grain of smuggled rice, every terrified defecting citizen, every thumb drive loaded with banned South Korean soap operas passes through your designated territory. Nothing moves across the ice without your explicit permission. Nothing moves across the ice without your substantial cut. You live in a sprawling, private villa equipped with a diesel generator that runs 24 hours a day. Your wife wears authentic Chanel perfume smuggled in a diplomatic pouch. You eat fresh pork, imported mandarin oranges, and drink real French cognac. You live like an untouchable god in this frozen, starving wasteland. But you're a god standing precariously on a trapdoor. You charge exactly $4,500 per head to order your border guards to look the other way while defectors cross the perilous river. You personally collect the thick bundles of crisp $100 bills. You bury them in a heavy, waterproof iron safe hidden beneath your master bedroom floorboards. The wealth is intoxicating, but the tax of survival is crippling. You must pass exactly 60% of this hard currency up the chain to the insatiable generals in Pyongyang. If your monthly envelope is ever light, you will be swiftly replaced. Replacement in your position usually involves a blindfold and a firing squad. You trust absolutely no one. Your personal adjutant is a paid informant for the Kukabawibu, the dreaded secret police. You know this as a fact because you secretly pay him triple his government salary to report only your most minor, fabricated infractions. You play a terrifying daily game of chess with your own shadow. The river freezes completely solid in late January. A night patrol catches a desperate family of 4 hiding in the frozen reeds. The father falls to his knees in the snow, offering you everything he possesses in the world, a pathetic handful of thin gold rings. You look down at his 2 shivering children, their faces smeared with freezing mud and tears. You suddenly remember the agonizing, bone-deep starvation of your own youth in the infantry. A flicker of suppressed humanity tries to violently claw its way up your throat. You swallow it down like bitter bile. The secret police are always watching, waiting for a single moment of weakness. Your mercy would be your death warrant. You coldly order the family handed over to the Boibu agents. You watch them dragged away, knowing with absolute certainty they are destined for the brutal political prison camps. Their frantic, terrified screams echo off the frozen water, piercing the night. You turn your back and retreat into the suffocating warmth of your heated villa. You wash your hands twice with expensive imported French soap. The invisible smell of the blood never quite comes off your skin. Level 6. The Corps Commander. You've been permanently summoned to the glittering, artificial capital city of Pyongyang. You wear the heavy, glittering shoulder boards of a Jungjang, a 2-star lieutenant general. You officially command an entire army corps, tens of thousands of men spread across the southern provinces. You live in an exclusive, high-rise luxury apartment in the Kangwon-do district, reserved only for the regime's elite. You have a personal military driver, a dedicated chef, and a black Mercedes-Benz with tinted windows. You eat at highly specialized, closed-door banquets where the long tables groan under the sheer weight of imported caviar and roasted pheasant. You are constantly surrounded by men whose chests are literally armored in rows of heavy, clinking metals. You quickly realize the metals are nothing more than psychological armor. They are glittering shields designed to hide the abject terror beating inside every chest in the room. You are now high enough in the stratosphere of power to see the true, terrifying face of the beast. You sit in high-security command briefings deep inside reinforced underground bunkers. The massive electronic maps on the wall detail the complex invasion routes into South Korea. You know with agonizing certainty that the entire strategy is a fabricated, suicidal fantasy. Your heavy artillery pieces are permanently rusted into their defensive positions. Your frontline tanks lack the refined fuel to idle their engines for more than 20 minutes. Your infantrymen are physically stunted, suffering from chronic malnutrition and intestinal parasites. If a real war ever starts, your entire command will be systematically vaporized in 3 days by relentless American air power. You can never, ever speak this objective truth aloud. To whisper the reality of the situation to a trusted colleague is outright treason. To officially acknowledge reality on paper is an immediate death sentence. You must enthusiastically demand impossible readiness quotas from your starving subordinates. You order a massive, utterly pointless winter mobilization exercise to demonstrate your revolutionary zeal. You know as a statistical fact that hundreds of your men will die of exposure, vehicle accidents, and starvation during the drill. You sign the execution order with a gold-plated fountain pen gifted by the Central Committee. You attend a lavish reception hosted by the Central Military Commission. You drink heavily, laughing uproariously at jokes that aren't remotely funny. Your eyes constantly dart around the luxurious room, tracking who speaks to whom, who stands too close, who leaves early. Political alliances shift and collapse like sand in a typhoon. A fellow general you shared drinks with just yesterday is suddenly missing from the banquet hall. Nobody asks where he is. Nobody ever mentions his name again. He has simply ceased to exist in the timeline of history. You excuse yourself to the opulent marble restroom. You lock the stall, lean over the porcelain, and violently vomit up the caviar and cognac. You wash your pale face in the sink, forcing your mouth back into a rigid, fiercely loyal smile. You are an absolute master of survival, and you are entirely dead inside. Level 7. The General Staff Director. You are a Songjang, a highly feared 3-star Colonel General. You work in the dark, bureaucratic heart of the Ministry of People's Armed Forces. You no longer command troops shivering in the mud. You command the vast, invisible systems of control that keep those troops permanently enslaved. Your massive office is lined with expensive, imported soundproofed wood paneling. You know for a fact there are 3 sophisticated listening devices embedded deeply in the walls. You know exactly which panels hide the microphones. You make sure to face them and speak loudly, clearly, whenever you offer praise for the Supreme Leader's genius. You are responsible for the complex logistics of the nuclear program's security force. The numbers passing across your mahogany desk are astronomical and terrifying. You secretly manage a black operations budget of $400 million generated purely from illicit global weapons sales. You coordinate massive shipments of conventional arms with brutal syndicates in Africa and the Middle East. You are moving highly illegal ballistic missile components disguised on cargo manifests as heavy agricultural machinery. The sheer stress of the international espionage makes your hands shake uncontrollably. You hide the violent tremor by keeping your hands permanently clasped tightly behind your back. Your most horrifying duty is reviewing the execution warrants for senior military officers. These are men you have known personally for decades. These are men who attended your daughter's wedding, who drank safely in your home. Their listed crimes are entirely fabricated by the secret police. Disrespectful posture during a military parade, falling asleep during a mandatory ideological broadcast, clapping with insufficient enthusiasm when the leader entered the room. You sign the heavy parchment warrants without a single second of hesitation. If you pause, if your pen hovers over the paper for even a moment, your name will undoubtedly be on the next warrant. You order the executions carried out publicly with 4-barreled anti-aircraft guns. You explicitly require the victims' immediate families to sit in the front row of the bleachers to watch the annihilation. You don't attend the executions yourself. You sit alone in your soundproof office and stare blankly at the oil painting of Mount Paektu on your wall. You realize you have traded your humanity for a fleeting, incredibly fragile proximity to absolute power. You are trapped permanently in a golden cage suspended by a single thread over a pit of fire. You can't sleep. When you close your eyes, you see the shredded, obliterated faces of the men you casually erased. You open your eyes, pour another glass of imported poison, and wait for dawn. Level 8. The Minister of Defense. You are a Daejang, a full 4-star general. You are widely considered one of the 10 most powerful men in the entire nation. You appear regularly in the heavily curated state media broadcasts, standing mere feet from the supreme leader. You hold a small government-issued notebook in your left hand. You frantically write down every single mundane word he speaks, treating casual observations like divine scripture. You nod your head with a frantic, exaggerated, almost comical level of agreement. You are 68 years old, a heavily scarred veteran of a lifetime of bloody political purges. Your chest is covered in so many heavy enameled metals that you stoop slightly under their physical weight. The starving public sees a terrifying, immovable titan of military might. The hidden reality is a groveling, utterly terrified courtier begging for his life every single day. The supreme leader is deeply unpredictable, driven by paranoia and absolute whim. His fleeting moods dictate the survival or agonizing death of thousands. You attend an unannounced ballistic missile launch on the eastern coast. The freezing wind is howling violently off the East Sea, cutting through your heavy greatcoat. The supreme leader makes a casual, offhand joke about the color of the smoke from the rocket booster. You have exactly 1.5 seconds to register the joke, analyze the tone, and laugh. You laugh loudly, forcing hot tears to well in your eyes to demonstrate pure, unadulterated joy. If you laugh a fraction of a second too late, you are deemed insolent. If you laugh too briefly, you are deemed secretly disloyal. You walk the invisible razor's edge of unquestioning submission. Your immediate predecessor was abruptly vaporized by a mortar round simply because he slightly disagreed on the placement of a new training facility. You enthusiastically agree to everything. You critically suggest absolutely nothing. You are a highly decorated, heavily armed echo chamber. You sit completely alone in the cavernous back of your armored limousine. The thick, bulletproof tinted windows hide your exhausted face from the starving masses walking in the dark. You rub your chest, feeling the dangerous, irregular flutter of your aging heart. You can't go to the state hospital for treatment. Physical sickness is immediately perceived as weakness by your ambitious rivals. Weakness is an open invitation to be quietly replaced and eliminated. You swallow illegal black market beta blockers imported secretly from Switzerland. You look out at the dark, glittering monuments of Pyongyang. You own vast mansions, secret foreign bank accounts, and control the lives of 1 million armed men. You would trade it all, instantly, for one single day without the suffocating grip of fear. Level 9. the Vice Marshal. You hold the incredibly rare exalted rank of Chasu. It is a rank given to very few living men. It is a rank that clearly marks you as an elder statesman, a foundational pillar of the ruling regime. It is also undeniably the most dangerous rank in human existence. You are simply too powerful. You are a massive threat to the throne by your very existence. Your deep influence within the Central Military Commission is vast and deeply rooted. Hundreds of senior officers owe you their careers, their wealth, and their lives. The Supreme Leader knows this intimately. He watches you with flat, dead, unreadable eyes during the massive national parades. You stand highly visible on the grand balcony of Kim Il-sung Square. Below you, hundreds of thousands of goose-stepping soldiers violently shake the earth with their synchronized boots. You salute, your hand rigid, your ancient face locked into a perfect mask of iron devotion. But you can physically feel the crosshairs of a sniper rifle resting squarely on your spine. You know the state security agents are relentlessly building a massive file on your every movement. They are secretly interrogating your mistresses in underground cells. They are viciously auditing the shadow construction companies you secretly control. They are desperately looking for a reason, an excuse, a single misplaced word. You frantically try to outmaneuver them in the dark. You offer up your closest, most loyal allies as political sacrifices. You stand at a podium and publicly denounce a general who once saved your life as a traitorous factionalist. You watch him physically dragged out of a committee meeting by plainclothes guards, screaming your name. You do not flinch, blink, or look away. You do it solely to buy yourself another 6 months of breathing. You have reached the absolute, undeniable summit of human ruthlessness. You sit late at night in your private, heavily guarded library, surrounded by banned foreign books you aren't allowed to read. You realize with crushing clarity that there is no exit strategy from this game. You can't simply retire to the countryside. You can't defect to the West because your crimes against humanity are far too vast. You must die in the saddle, or you will die in a concrete basement with a pistol barrel pressed against the base of your skull. You slowly stroke the cold mahogany of your antique desk. You wait in the suffocating silence for the midnight knock on the heavy oak door. Every footstep echoing in the hallway makes your shallow breath stop entirely. You are a master of the universe, waiting helplessly for the butcher. Level 10, the Marshal. You are Wan Su. There is no one above you but the reigning deity of the dynasty himself. You are the absolute face of the military, a living, breathing historical monument. You are a very old man, incredibly frail, your brittle bones aching constantly with the winter damp. You no longer fear the midnight purges. You have survived them all by outliving the men who plotted against you. You are the last of the old guard, kept alive purely as a propaganda symbol of generational continuity. You wear a bespoke uniform, heavily tailored to hide your dramatically shrinking frame. Your massive epaulets are heavy with solid gold bullion. You attend the massive multi-day party congresses, sitting perfectly still in the very front row. You cast the first highly televised vote of unanimous approval for policies you do not even read. You aren't making actual military decisions anymore. The young, fiercely hungry generals fight those bloody bureaucratic battles in the dark shadows far beneath you. You are a silent ghost, quietly observing the massive meat grinder machine you helped build over 50 years. You are gently guided on highly orchestrated inspection tours of model military bases. You slowly walk past rigid ranks of 17-year-old Chansa. Their faces are gaunt, their cheeks sunken, their cotton tunics dangerously thin in the biting wind. You look deeply into their hollow, starving, terrified eyes. You vividly see yourself, 60 long years ago, holding a rusted shovel in the frozen dirt. The brutal cycle hasn't broken. The machine has only grown vastly larger and infinitely hungrier. You offer them rehearsed words of revolutionary glory and impending triumph. The empty words turn to dry ash in your mouth. You know the ultimate devastating truth. There is no glorious victory, coming, no unification, no paradise. There is only this endless freezing mechanical loop of suffering. You return to your palatial, hyper-secure estate hidden deep in the mountains. You are surrounded by 300 heavily armed guards, yet you are utterly, completely alone. You pour a cup of hot ginseng tea with violently shaking liver-spotted hands. You sit in the absolute, deafening silence of your empty mansion. The great military machine hums in the distance, waiting patiently for the next generation of meat. The heavy iron door of your life has locked from the outside.